Let's talk about Betsy DeVos because her confirmation was unprecedented. It took Mike Pence's tie-breaking vote as the vice president to get her confirmed. 50 senators voted against her, 50 voted for her, and she got confirmed through Mike Pence's tie-breaking vote. That is unprecedented, but it's not surprising given what DeVos represents and what exactly she was up against. So, what I want to explain here is exactly what this is about. But for those that are afraid of what DeVos will do, don't be, because two reasons. Well, actually, three reasons. One, it's not the person at the top that matters the most, it's the deputies in any department. She hasn't picked any deputies. Scrutinize those if you really care about that, and see where they come from and where they stand. It doesn't matter who leads the department because the department head is just a manager, an administrator. They administrate a department. In this case, the Department of Education has over 4,000 employees and a budget of close to $120 billion. Her job is to manage that. She can't just change policy on her own. She can't even change how the money is spent on her own because that gets decided by Congress. Congress holds the purse. Congress decides how the money is spent. And every department, every cabinet pick is accountable ultimately to Congress. And you know those Republicans that voted for her? You know what the thing is about public education? You know where that matters the most? In rural areas which depend on public education because they don't have private schools. In any kind of... they don't have any other schools except public schools. Guess where the Republicans come from? Rural states. A lot of them. A lot of the people that voted for her come from rural states. In fact, one of the reason that the two Republican senators that voted against DeVos gave when it came to voting against her was that they weren't certain she would protect public education in rural areas. Now, we'll see what happens, and let's be clear here. If they screw public education in rural areas in particular, the Republicans are going to get fucked up. You know, this is the thing that annoys me about people talking, oh, they'll destroy our healthcare system. If they destroy their U.S. healthcare system, they'll be wiped out, and they know it. They'll lose Congress on both houses. They'll lose the presidency. They can't just... You don't just screw around with healthcare. You know how they know this? Because Obama did this. He messed around with healthcare. It blew up in his face, and it blew up in the Democrats' face. Because the Democrats were the ones that passed Obamacare on their own. No Republican voted for Obamacare. That's something that people need to understand when it comes down to issues like these. And same with education. You think anyone messing with education on a fundamental way, making widespread sweeping changes, will get away with it if that blows up? Either it works, in which case, good job. If it doesn't, they'll be wiped out. This is why I'm not too worried about healthcare in the United States, because both parties know they have to fix the issues. But on education, the concerning issue is who exactly opposed us and why. But I just want to make a point here to people on this level. I'm not concerned about internal issues because the Senate has power, Congress, House, Senate, all that. There's going to be a lot of debate, a lot of scrutiny, and American people do care a lot about internal issues. The thing that concerns me, the thing that I'm paying attention the most when it comes to Trump, is foreign policy. And not just because I'm not an American and obviously I care more about what the United States does on a global scale, but rather that on foreign policy, people don't care. They don't scrutinize things. What, you think that this travel ban is getting scrutiny because of the way it affects the other countries? No, it's getting scrutiny because people in the US are getting affected. Meanwhile, there are 4 million refugees outside of Syria and camps surrounding Syria. Do you know how much it costs to bring a single refugee inside the United States? Tens of thousands of dollars. For tens of thousands of dollars, you could help 10, 20 people in those camps. But it's important to bring those refugees in. Bullshit. On top of that, look, for instance, DeVos. If DeVos is something that should keep you up at night, you know what should keep you up at night? That there's 2 million people in Yemen starving. And they're starving because of Saudi Arabia blockading Yemen with the help of the United States. And that happened under Obama. Trump is continuing it because you can just change foreign policy on a whim. If you did, the State Department would revolt against you. On top of that, you have Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Syria, dozens, if not hundreds of people dying daily. You know, if it's pretty bad that you get hundreds, but typically dozens of people die every day in Syria. You have Mosul, you have fights in northwestern Syria, fights in eastern Syria, you have the Kurds marching on Raqqa. You have Ukraine and Russia staring down at each other in eastern Ukraine with tens of thousands of troops. And you aim to telling me that the most concerning thing is DeVos. I mean, come on, really. I really wish people cared more about this stuff because, hey, there's the potential that a major ground war in Ukraine could break out, like a major ground war in Europe, to a scale we haven't seen in decades in Europe. But no, I'm sure it's more important to focus on Betsy DeVos. I'm not trying to ignore the issue on DeVos. I'm just making a point that people are ridiculous on this issue, which they are. They are pathetic on this issue. They are ridiculous. And it's more important to focus on foreign policy as I see it because the president has a lot of power on foreign policy, far more so than on internal policy. In part because of less public scrutiny. On the other hand, because under the Bush years specifically, they passed a large number of laws, a huge amount of laws that gave the president a substantial amount of power when it comes to foreign policy that the courts upheld. So that's why, for instance, Trump's travel ban is likely to be upheld by courts. We'll see about, maybe not all the provisions, maybe not the way it was implemented, but the idea that it's unconstitutional, no, that discussion has already been had. And that's why I think foreign policy is something that needs to be scrutinized more than internal policy, because on internal policy you have a great deal of debate. But going back to DeVos, so it's not about her so-called incompetence, and it's not that she bribed Republicans. She spent a lot of money in Michigan, in Detroit, and she certainly has a lot of Republicans by the balls, but that's not why they voted for her. In other states, where she didn't spend money, where she doesn't have the connections that she does in, say, Michigan. Rather, it's not the case of privatizing the entire school system. It's not the case of her being a crazy Christian conservative that just wants to teach people creationism in the school system. Bullshit. Though she's likely to take a swipe at Common Core, though that's more so because people despise Common Core rather than her own stance on it. Did you know that Betsy DeVos once supported organizations that fought for Common Core? Actually, that was one of the reasons why people on the right wing, on the Republican side, disliked her when she was first announced. That's an issue that came up, but something people won't talk about. Now, yes, she is going to take a swipe at Common Core because a lot of people have wanted to take a swipe at Common Core on the Republican side. Actually, more so on both sides. Really, people hate Common Core in the United States. But on top of that, the real thing about Betsy DeVos, and the real thing when it comes down to her confirmation fight, it's the teacher unions. And the teacher unions don't even represent teachers, let alone caring about student interests. The teacher unions represent an elite clique of people. In Illinois, for instance, they haven't had a state budget for the last 3 years, if I'm not wrong on this. And one of the main reasons why that is, besides someone like Madigan in Illinois, read up who that is, and you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. A top Democratic elected official in Illinois who's basically been holding the budget ransom for the last 3 years. But beyond that, really the teacher unions, in the Chicago Teacher Union, is basically holding the whole thing, they're holding the whole system hostage. And it's not just, it's not that they're serving the interests of teachers as a whole. They're not. They're serving specific interests, their own interest for an elite clique or for a small group of people. Teacher unions in the United States are not only harmful to overall teachers, but they're harmful to education, they're harmful to parents, they're harmful to students. They just want to fight tooth and nail for no reform whatsoever in the U.S. education system whatsoever. This is why, by the way, when DeVos was initially announced and when she got through her initial confirmation hearing, you had some Democrats in the Senate basically coming out and defending her and, defending the idea of charter schools, right? And private schools, because they know it's a broken system. They know there's a lot of problems with the teacher unions. They know. But the thing is, the teacher unions have these guys by the balls. They're vicious, they're ugly, and they spew a lot of lies. Hey, you want to know why a lot of the things that came out statistically against DeVos came out? It's because teachers, part of unions, spread them. It's ridiculous, it's pathetic, and it's actually harmful to the entirety of the U.S. educational system. So, to my mind, the real thing about DeVos isn't anything she'll do in terms of screwing over public schools. Rather, what she'll do in terms of taking down the teacher unions, which have destroyed America's educational system. So we'll see what she does on that level. Now, again, she doesn't have the power to do whatever the hell she wants, because a lot of that stuff has to be confirmed, has to go through the Senate, has to go through the House. And obviously there are interests here on both sides when it comes to education. There are interests on the right side, there are conservative interests, there is also Republican interests. Well, DeVos has certainly picked a fight with a foe that is going to hammer her at every opportunity, a very vicious foe, and a foe that lies and manipulates public opinion. So we'll see what ends up happening on the level of education. Obviously, it is something that will affect a lot of people. But again, it's not just her decisions. And again, just if you care a lot about this, and you want to know which direction she's going to take the Department of Education in, look at who will be appointed as deputies to her. That's what I feel. That's the most important part when it comes to the Department of Education. If you want to know what direction she's going to take, look at the people she's going to appoint under her. Trump really will appoint, and see where that goes. Costin here on Serious Gaming, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video.